Yum, yum. It's time for a tasty and refreshing snack.
You know who I can do without? I can do without the people in the video store.
Which ones?
All of them. They never rent quality flicks. They always pick the most intellectually devoid movie on the racks.
And now, on with the show.
You are invited to experience an extraordinary motion picture about love, bravery, honor, and the triumph of the human spirit.
How else do you stink?
He was offensive.
That is the first naked lady in the history of radio.
I really think you need counseling.
You're pathetic.
I'm not pathetic.
He was disgusting.
I refuse to work with this man 1 minute longer.
Give me a kiss.
You want me to go on?
Springtime, a time for friends and family to come together and feel the love in the air. Blow by blow.
Save it for the show, okay?
Meet Jerry's guests.
I didn't say you could wear my jacket. I didn't say you could sleep with my husband.
Backstage.
Hey, are you ever gonna do a show on people who love farm animals?
Guys, what's going on? You are listening to This Week in Geek.net, and I'm your host, Mike the Birdman, but I'm not alone as we return to the Twig video store, and it's time for yet another fun-filled episode of Loose Cannon, the show where we talk about the movies of yesteryear. Maybe they were hits, maybe they weren't, maybe you've never even heard of them, but maybe you saw it on late night cable. I don't know. But I'm joined by my good friend from the great state of New Jersey,
Ken from This Anime, and this is the second bad movie you've forced me to watch.
Hey, in my defense, Alex picked one of these. And of course, welcoming back to the show, one of our newest contributors, the local Guelph political expert and all-around good guy.
Oh, I'm Adam A. Donaldson. Thank you for having me back.
Of course, dude. Yeah. So we are back here on Loose Cannon. And in this episode of the show, this was something that I was kind of... I can't remember what the genesis was for this idea. So the two movies we're going to be talking about tonight, to give you kind of a clue, is we're going to be talking about Howard Stern's autobiography.
Semi-autobiographical.
Yeah. Semi-auto whatever movie, Private Parts, that came out in 1997. And then there's a movie I'd heard about for quite some time, but I'd never seen because I was just never into this particular host of daytime television. And I'm talking about Jerry Springer's movie from, I want to say 1999 or 1998, somewhere in there. And what I got was, wow. That was certainly a waste of 90 minutes I'm never getting back. So yeah, it was a amusing time. So, the first movie I guess we'll talk about the good one first, is Howard Stern's Private Parts. And I'll start here just to kind of give you guys a little bit of time to think about how you first came to seeing this. So I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and Howard Stern was one of those names you just knew, whether you lived in Canada, the US, or pretty much anywhere in the world, literally the king of all media at that time. And in Canada, we would sometimes get this syndicated in Toronto. I remember it was kind of a big deal in the 90s that, some stations would syndicate portions of the show. And I was remarkably curious. I mean, I'd heard about this person. I mean, I was a person who grew up on the Jerky Boys and that type of rude, crude humor. So I'm like, all right, I'm interested. So I remember going to my local cinemas, which at the time was Owen Sound Cinemas 3, back when we only had 3 very small screens in a very small mall, which was basically the dirt mall that we used to basically call it. And I remember seeing this on like a Wednesday or a Thursday night. I was in town. I don't think I was seeing my girlfriend at the time. I might have been going to do something else in town. But anyway, I remember going to it, and I remember them handing out little buttons. We're thinking, oh, that's kind of cool. But I remember halfway through the movie, the film snapped. Like the physical piece of film broke, and we had to take a break for like 30 minutes while the projectionist went in to fix it. So eventually that all gets fixed and the rest of the movie proceeds. And I had no idea about a lot of Howard Stern's young life. And at this time, I did have a budding interest in radio. I used to listen to a station up in Owen Sound called AM 560 CFOS, which was a classic oldie station. And I was familiar with a lot of the DJs. I would actually call in, I'd talk with them. Think of that what you will to a child of whatever age. But I eventually I would get a tour of the radio station and I would meet the news director. I'd meet all the on-air personalities. I would come to know some of them later when I worked at Rogers Television a number of years later. But I'm thinking this radio thing seems kind of cool. And I remember one night I was sitting up in my room and I used to live in a very small town outside of the Owen Sound area. And sometimes on a clear night, you could pick up radio stations from other areas. And I'm not just talking Toronto, but I could pick up stations on a really clear night as far away as New York and as far away as Chicago, because I could hear them like do the call letters like, hey, you're listening to whatever in downtown Chicago. It's currently 58 degrees Fahrenheit. It is cloudy and blah, 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 blah. And I remember thinking, oh, this is really freaking cool. So obviously that very much led to my interest in radio, and not so much the presentation form of Howard Stern, who is like, let's just offend everybody. Because I actually went back and watched a couple of interviews last night with him, and someone described him as he looks like a very evil Ned Flanders. And I think this interview is from like 1984, 85. I'm thinking that's not wrong, which is kind of weird. But yeah, and eventually that's how I got into Howard Stern, was by watching the movie. I've been aware of some of his career like ever since, but I really haven't followed it with any real great interest. And even the stuff that pops up on YouTube from time to time, that's pretty much all I've ever really seen of him. I know if you want to get his show on Sirius satellite radio, you have to pay extra for that. And that's kind of why I'm glad we're kind of talking about this, because without people like Howard Stern, what would the radio landscape look like? Because that's when we started getting into premium radio again, like that streaming stuff that you could get radio anywhere. And I was like, all right, this is interesting. So anyway, I guess who wants to pick up the ball next?
I might as well. I am. We are a radio family. We are a talk radio family.
House, we are a radio family.
No, but like genuinely, like in my family, talk radio is a mainstay and always has been. And honestly, I knew of Stern and had heard bits and pieces of his stuff here and there. This is the first time I'm actually watching this movie. I've known about this movie for over a decade at this point. But overall, like, yeah, no, this is a fine film. I'm not blown away per se. And I think that's fine, though. I think it really is just a fine film altogether. There's not really much I can say other than that.
Well, you kind of grew up in this guy's backyard, but I think by the time you were around, because like you're younger than us, he'd moved to Los Angeles by this time.
Yeah,
right?
He had already moved at that point.
For when he was getting bigger and bigger in the 90s, like as a provocateur, and there was a lot of hand-wringing, and the movie kind of gets to this, although I think the movie kind of ends right before he really breaks big and becomes a nationwide syndicated host. But I think I can't remember if I saw this in the theater or if I saw it on video after the fact, but I do remember when it came out. I wasn't a big Stern fan. I don't think I'd even heard his radio show when this came out. I was certainly aware of him, and I thought it was. I think one of the things that I found interesting that it's his life story-ish, and he was playing himself in it, and he quite blatantly plays the younger version of himself too, and it's kind of kind of a joke in the film that I'm old and I'm playing young me, just go with it. It's but what I find interesting watching it now, and I did rewatch it probably the first time since I saw since I saw it originally, is what a time capsule it is that Stern, kind of against the odds, became so big, so central to the culture, despite the fact so many people had it in for him. So many people, like the people at the terrestrial radio, that were so uncomfortable with his brash style and his crudeness and his crassness, and the fact he'd just go for broke and say anything. It's almost quaint now, living in an era where the gatekeepers are gone. You can be straight up Nazi on whatever platform you like, and that kind of is okay, but Howard Stern, blowing into a microphone so that a woman can have an orgasm as she's sitting over a speaker, all on live radio, was the kind of the end of civilization as we know it back in the 80s.
Yeah, like, it's wild to think about, like, how this was considered, like, the pearl clutching of the day. I mean, there's one point in the movie where they're talking with one of his former program directors, and they're like, yeah, who wanted to run a contest where they would award a new toilet to the winner with the largest bowel movement. It's like, funny. That's really amusing. That's some funny shit. Literally. And I was like, wow. And like, when I worked in radio, like in the station, we weren't allowed to do anything remotely that messed up. And just, and it was revolutionary too, because the guy would chat with his news people. Because typically you're separate, like you've got your main talk studio, so you've got your board, your music and whatever, and you might have a person in another booth who would come in and do the news every 30 to every top of the hour. Maybe you might have a new weather person, not too often. But yeah, and him just having real banter. And as someone who took radio in college, like I specifically have a diploma in radio and television presentation. The thing I like about Stern, or at least how he portrays himself, is it's very genuinely them. Like, it's a very real type of person. And the best radio is the stuff that sounds very natural. Like, I remember going through college, and when it came to radio, we were always taught to have our bits prepared in advance and have your like talking points, and some people can do that. But when I watched this movie, because I used to watch this a couple times during college, I was like, I don't want to do what they're teaching me, not because I think I'm better than anybody else. It's because it's not real. It sounds stilted. It sounds so disingenuous. It's not real. You're not a person. You're reading off a script, and some people can pull that off and it sounds great, and other people can't. It's not living and breathing radio in the moment. And there's something about Stern's performance in Private Parts where it seems so natural. Like, he's genuinely a really funny guy. He's got great comedic timing with Fred Norris and Robin Quivers, and everybody plays so well off each other. And then when Paul Giamatti comes into the picture as Pig Vomit, which is evidently Pig Virus was the original name of the person. This was one of Paul Giamatti's first movies, but this wasn't the movie that got him noticed, which really surprised me. I was listening to an interview that Giamatti did after this movie, and he was talking with Stern, saying the movie I did after this was Thunderpants, which is a movie about a kid who farts to power a rocket to go to NASA. But the movie that got Paul Giamatti noticed was Sideways. And people were like, I got people knew who I was from Private Parts, and casting directors starting saying, "Hey, I really liked you in that movie. Would you like this role?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." And Sideways was the movie that really got him paid.
Yeah, like Private Parts got his foot in the door. It's Sideways that actually blew up his career. Again, like there's a great quote. The person that I know uses it a lot, but he's like, I don't even remember who said it. But everyone in Hollywood is a 10-year overnight success. And for the most part, if you look at history, yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Yeah, because when you look at Stern's career, he didn't start off super hot. Like, he had to grind his way through Hartford and Detroit before he got into the larger kind of markets from like Washington and then moving up to New York. And something I had noticed during the movie, because like now that I've got like 2 semesters of film school. By any means am I not a fucking professional, but I love set dressing. So I was watching the movie and I'm just noticing all the little things in the background. And at one point he takes this B-movie actress, something Fairchild, I think was the name. I don't know if that's based upon a real person or not. But they go to this movie premiere and I noticed there's a poster for Friday the 13th. And I noticed the date on when this event supposedly took place was in the late 1970s. Friday the 13th didn't come out until 1980. And then again, when he goes to Washington, there's a Friday the 13th Part 2 poster in 1981. The timing doesn't work out. And I was like, that's kind of interesting. I'm a dork for knowing that. But I don't know. Like, it was just one of those little things that I noticed. But one thing I very clearly remember about this movie is I remember buying the soundtrack for this movie we used to have a store in Canada called Music World, which was pretty much the only place to go for music for a while. We used to have HMV, but we had Music World where like I was from. So I bought the cassette to this and I bought the CD. And where I'm from in small town rural Ontario is, I mostly grew up around country music, and I'd much rather have hot diarrhea poured into my ear than listen to most of that. There's an image for you. But yeah, like I wasn't into this fucking your sister in the back of a pickup truck sort of thing. So when I got the Howard Stern soundtrack, I was just listening to all these bands I'd only marginally been exposed to. And I would argue that Private Parts has a really solid soundtrack to it. I'm actually very surprised they didn't include more skits from his radio days on there. However,
I mean, again, the soundtrack is of an era. This was the era where any movie with a soundtrack would make
the soundtrack was promotion.
Gangbusters.
Yeah, like one thing I did find out, there's a scene in the movie where it's Fred, Robin, Jackie the Joke Man, Martley, and they're all sitting around playing a version of the Match Game. For those of you who are a little younger than me,
I know
Methuselah.
The Match Game.
So it would be like, make something blank a doodle do, because there's the rule in radio or the rule in broadcast, you can't say the 7 dirty words. I can't rattle them off the top of my head, but you basically get the idea. So yeah, they are in the movie, and they figured out a very clever way to get around it. So this interview that I watched on YouTube, it makes fun of the way Howard says WNBC. And they actually have a clip of Howard, Robin, Fred, and all them doing the Match Game in studio. And it's live to air. And the version I saw in the news clip is way worse than the one I saw in the movie. I'm thinking, wow, how did you manage that? And I was like, holy shit. I also found out that Howard's news person that he had after Robin got fired, that's not that guy's real name. that's actually based upon another individual who is an amalgamation of several other people that he worked with at that time. And even when it came to pig vomit, Kenny, there even Paul Giamatti didn't do any research on this guy before he came in, but people who now know who the character is based upon was like, wow, you really kind of grew into him. He's like, I had no clue. But yeah, it's just it's kind of like Adam and you said, Ken, this is a very unique time capsule of the 1970s, the 80s, and then, like I said, just before his career blew up in the mid 1980s, going into the 90s, where he was literally everywhere. Like there were CDs, there were T-shirts. He had a TV show for a little while, and post movie, like I said, this is a guy who became internationally syndicated. It was a big deal. I remember at the time, people were talking about this on the internet when it was very much in its infancy in the like 90s. People talking about like sharing clips online. People would trade cassettes of the shows. But I remember when Sirius Satellite came into the picture, and that was, you know, the new hotness. They were talking about getting people like Stern to be exclusive to them. And obviously he made a metric.
I remember that. I was gonna say, I remember that it was such a huge thing when he went to Sirius, because he was like the first like major terrestrial radio personality to go to Sirius, and a lot of people like that was the day the music died, except for like all of radio, and there is still a lot of terrestrial radio around, but I mean, the fact that if you want a big salary, you want freedom, to be your maximum creative, you know, Howard going to Sirius was like, this is it. This is the moment where satellite radio becomes a thing and terrestrial radio becomes a little less important. It was that mammoth.
Yeah, because like I can't recall too many people who made that big jump who like everybody knew who Stern was. Like you can ask anybody reasonably who this person is, but you ask someone who is Don Imus, they might know that name, but I'm gonna guess probably not.
A lot of big radio names are much more local. Like going to my local radio station, NJ 1015. The big personality is Big Joe Henry. He's just he's basically the weekend dude, and he's basically the disc jockey for the weekend, and that's genuinely what goes on, and he is the name of that for that state.
Yeah,
station,
like it all comes down to local market. Like I listen to a station out of Philadelphia called WMMR, and they have a morning show called Preston and Steve. And that's through, I can't remember the name of the broadcaster that does it, but they are a very popular morning show and they syndicate all their stuff online, but people know who they are cross country because they've been around for so long. They're virtually a radio institution on the East Coast. But some of their other personalities, amazingly interactive, like Jackie Bam Bam, who leads the Mummers Day Parade in Philly most often. People know the name, but unless you're local to East Coast, Philly, New York, Washington, whatever, you probably don't know who this person is in, say, Dallas, Texas, for example. But yeah, like it's interesting how we don't have these radio juggernauts anymore unless they're like a sports personality or they're like a podcaster, because now you have your Joe Rogan Experience, your Stone Cold Steve Austin, your I don't know, who are some other contemporaries who have really big podcasts? Maybe Chris Jericho, I guess.
Podcasts have kind of replaced that.
Kevin Smith.
Yeah, and
podcasting has filled that void of the national syndication. It really is kind of, I don't know, does Ryan Seacrest still do the American Top 40? I have no idea, because Does he? Okay,
think
like
so.
that may be the
Yeah, he
last of
does.
like the major nationally syndicated shows like on terrestrial radio. I think there's another top 40 that's hosted by somewhere else, but it that's kind of gone away. It's
Maybe Nikki
but I mean,
Sixx or something.
Podcasting is or that has gone, and it's funny how things go around and come around, because I remember somebody. It started to become more common to do sort of like these live podcasts, these live streams, and somebody's like, "Oh, you're doing radio, except it's on the internet." So, yeah, and to your points too about the local guys. I'm not even sure. I couldn't even tell you who some of the local DJs and are on like our local. Yeah,
Maybe Larry,
Malott,
and that's it.
I think is technically retired, but he still does the Storm stuff because that's his passion. But even the local names, just maybe you hear the local radio station while you're in the store and it's playing local radio, maybe in your car because you just can't be bothered to. Maybe you have an older car where it doesn't have the smartphone Bluetooth connections, and maybe you just don't bother because you're driving 10 minutes and it's a hassle. You're just listening to radio incidentally. The radio's not as big a part of our lives as it once was. And I think for radio nerds like us, Private Parts calls back to a day where you could walk into a radio station. This is the great thing where he walks into his first job interview and the guy is fired and is like, okay, well, you'll start tomorrow. That just doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah. I was about to say, yeah, like when I was fresh out of college trying to get a radio station job, I had a couple things lined up, but they were out west. I would literally have to move cross country, and there was no guarantee I was going to get this like gig too. And now radio has changed so much. Like Howard has a whole production team behind, like it's not just one engineer. Like if you look at, for another good example of this might be Bert Kreischer and Tom Segura's Two Bears, One Cave podcast. They have an entire production crew who's putting that show on, not just engineers, but people who's a director, a floor director, stuff like that. Radio has more in common now with television than it does just a guy showing up in a booth. I remember one of my first on-air radio shifts, there was a 24-hour radio marathon we used to do at Niagara College, and that would happen around Christmas time, and I would most often take the overnight slot just because I wanted to be left alone, and I knew the equipment, so there might be an engineer who would be close by, but if something broke, that was on me to get that fixed before that song ended. And it was always just you, your decks, your recording software, and whatever else. Like you'd have to cue your own commercials and stuff like that. There's one moment that very much resonates with me. So Howard is doing the wacky morning show and he's in college. And I had a very similar experience. So during this moment in the movie, Howard spills tapes and everything, carts is what we call them, across the record player, and he makes this amazing sound and he freaks out. So in my experience, it was one of my first radio shifts. Like this is like first semester radio, so think 2006, like October. And this is when automation was just starting to come in. Like you'd have a computer program that would queue up the latest Green Day, Linkin Park song, whatever. Anyway, computer fucking crashes. The song is still playing. I have about a minute 30 to figure something out. So I'm scrambling in the booth. I'm calling down to my radio professor. And eventually I get brought a bunch of carts. Cool. Mike, just play it. So I play the thing. I put it in the deck. It starts playing. And I'm like, hey guys, that was Green Day's Jesus of Suburbia from Linkin Park, from Green Day's whatever. And we're going to listen to something else. I don't quite know what this is. It's Luther fucking Vandross in 2006. And I am just sitting there. The color has drained out of my face as my soul has left my body. I don't know how I'm going to throw back to this. So the engineers eventually get this computer software back on. But I remember for like 2 weeks, I was the Luther Vandross guy Um, I was like, fuck off. But yeah, like it made me feel so happy to go back and revisit this movie. It's a very treasured part of my childhood, very much a part of my identity. And I'm glad we all got a chance to kind of share in that. So I guess before we close out Private Parts, any closing thoughts on the film? Would you recommend for someone to go back and watch it today?
Oh, for sure.
To cut Ken off there. Just before we close this off, just to talk sort of textually about the movie and not just about how it relates to our fond memories of radio, but I find it interesting that it speaks to Howard Stern's kind of like, I don't want to say arrogance, but this only I can play me, and in telling my story, only I can do it, which was such a Stern thing at this point in his life, and in the late 1990s. The fact that it mixes, you have Robin Quivers playing herself, and you have Fred Norris playing himself, and other characters from the Stern universe making cameos. You have celebrity cameos like Letterman's in it, AC/DC's in it. MC Hammer is playing himself. John Stamos is like recreating the Fart Man thing. You have a mix of real actors like Mary McCormick playing his wife, and Paul Giamatti, who we already mentioned, and then you have the usual mix of, let's say, provocateurs. Jenna Jameson's in the film, not playing Jenna Jameson, but playing a similar character who is an adult entertainer. So it plays with these, what's real, what isn't, how much of this is like Stern rewriting his own history, but on the other hand, he seems so direct and honest that this has to be the real thing. So there's a lot of playing with your perceptions, the unreliable narrator. But I find it just enjoyable, as like, even if it is kind of bullshit, it does feel like you're getting inside his head a little at the moment he was like kind of his most iconic, which I'm not sure everyone at his level at this time would be as self-aware. I mean, you think about something like Bohemian Rhapsody, where Queen is very much involved in the molding and writing of their own life story, that you're not 100% sure how much of this is just sort of the nostalgia pill. Yeah.
I think the only other one that I can compare this to is probably Rocket Man, because Elton John was like, yeah, no, I fucked up a lot. I don't care what you put in this movie.
There was a lot of extravagance. Yeah.
There is one thing that I recently learned while I was doing a little bit of research into this movie, and it involves Paul Giamatti. There is one of my other favorite radio personalities, and I've talked about this a number of times since this person passed away a couple of years ago, was radio late night legend Art Bell. And there is a rumor that Paul Giamatti might be playing Art in a biopic. I really want this to happen in the most incredible way. We may be talking about Art Bell at some point this year. I'm sure I'll find a way to squeeze it into something. But yeah, like, I would love to see that come to fruition, just because, hey, that could be fun. But the next movie we're going to talk about is one that, again, I'd seen in the video store growing up. I'd seen the poster. This was a cultural phenomenon that was virtually unavoidable. Somehow, some way, I was able to narrowly avoid seeing more than 30 minutes of this utter tripe. And I'm talking about Jerry Springer. Jerry Springer, for all intents and purposes, was kind of, from what I understand, him and his personal life was kind of an okay guy. But the show that he did, the Jerry Springer Show, was relentlessly mocked in the 90s and into the 2000s. I mean, hell, even Weird Al wrote a song about it. And it was everywhere, like daytime trash TV, your Sally Jesse Raphael's, your Phil Donahue's, your Geraldo Rivera, Montel Williams, stuff like that. Like, whereas you'd get someone like Oprah, who eventually her show would transition from being about a real talk show would translate to we're going to talk to celebrities, and then that would evolve into your shit like, I don't know, the Kelly Clarkson show, Ellen, though she sucks, and stuff like that. Things would just evolve. So somehow somebody got the wonderful idea to put Jerry Springer into a movie that sort of shows the slice of life behind the guests who would appear on his show. Jerry plays a very thin, veiled version of himself hosting a talk show. The sets look similar, but not exact to the Jerry Springer show. They don't even have the proper music for it and everything. And as to what this movie's about, Spawn and Michael Dudikoff are in this. So the American Ninja and Spawn are in this. And I was like, what? This movie has a blowjob in like the first 3 minutes. It's a constant reoccurring theme. I can't even tell you what the precise plot about this is. Now, full disclosure, I was having some edibles during this because this was the only way this movie was endurable. So I shit you not, I looked at my friend Liam when I forced them to watch this with me, by the way, almost at gunpoint. And I'm about 3 edibles in. And I paused the movie because they had to go to the bathroom. And I look at the timer and I shit you not, I'm like, how the fuck has it only been 30 minutes? And this movie would not fucking end. It just kept going and going. And what can I remember about this movie? Jerry Springer sings karaoke as a cowboy for some reason. Rapping black people on a plane because evidently that was a cultural thing. Let me see what else was offensive in this. The people who were the bookers for the show saying, well, are you in the fatties? Are you a fatty yourself? Michael Jai White saying, you Wookiee looking motherfucker was a classic line. And I remember typing it in our little group chat, like, oh my God, this is hell. I'm in hell. And I blame Alex for sending this to me because I said to Alex, what's a good movie to pair with like with like Howard Stern's Private Parts? This is like pairing, fucking, I don't know, Fanta with like a steak. You don't do it. This is like, oh my God, this is fucking terrible.
It orange Fanta, fine. Grape Fanta, yeah, no, that's terrible with a steak.
Yeah, like it was so fucking bad. I mean, I'm not gonna say I didn't have a few laughs at some points, but it was like, this is relentlessly fucking bad. And I'm not saying Michael Dudikoff is like the be all and end all fucking movies, but I'm like, dude, you're better than this. This is depressing. Michael Jai White, what the fuck are you doing here, Black Dynamite? Get the fuck out of here. You're Spawn.
Well, this was a year like the year after Spawn, which, even if Spawn doesn't bomb or doesn't like match like any expectation for like a blockbuster superhero movie, he should have had like more of a cushion. There should have been more of a parachute for Michael Jai White than retreating immediately into Ringmaster. But to rise to Alex's defense for a minute, I understand why they would pair it with Private Parts, because I think they're both 90s icons to an extent, Howard Stern and Jerry Springer. I think the difference is Stern had something to say, and I guess maybe because it was also based on his memoir, that he had something to say in his movie and being such an active part of the movie based on his life. I don't know what Jerry Springer was trying to do with Ringmaster, why he was participating, why it's a send-up of his show, because it feels like he's saying different things about the people who come on his show. Like, depending on the scene, it's like, can't believe these people come on my show and air their dirty laundry. They're so stupid. Or that's one of the modes. And the second mode is, hey, look at these people. Isn't it sad that the only way they are able to find fulfillment is to air out their dirty laundry on my stupid talk show? And the film goes back and forth deciding which one of these modes is right, except all the characters in it are kind of no redeeming qualities at all, and they are never redeemed.
Yeah, none. Yeah, there's not one likable person in this entire movie. There's a weird subplot where Jamie Presley, who I accidentally kept calling Jamie Kennedy, which
What a
that's a
Freudian
vastly
slip.
different movie. And I've met Jamie Kennedy. I know, right? So I was like, what the fuck? So there's a recurring plotline where Jamie Presley is sleeping with the husband, Michael Dudikoff, of another person named Carla
that's her
or Connie
mom.
or something like that. And we are not talking about Connie and Carla.
Well, Connie is
Oh
her
my
mom.
god. Yeah. Yes.
Sleeping with her stepfather, in other words.
Yes.
So that's a whole category on Pornhub in and of itself.
This is where it started.
And it's so, yeah, it's like, what the fuck? And it's so mindlessly stupid. And this movie is a lot more sexual than I thought it was gonna be. Like I said, other than the opening 5-minute blowjob, I'd say you get some pretty, I wouldn't say graphic depictions of sex, but people are in various positions only covered by a sheet, so you clearly know what's kind of going on.
I would say this is as hard R as it got in the time it came out.
Yeah, because it's like, okay, and there's one bit where this other woman calls the Springer hotline. It's like, hey, my husband or my boyfriend, whoever is sleeping with someone, and it's Michael Jai White's character, and the operator's on the other line. Well, how do you know that? So she kicks open the door, walks in, and like, because I can see him fucking her right now. And they start getting into it on the phone, and they play this awful, like, kind of stereotype where it's bad. I'm not even gonna attempt parody at it, but it's like, what the flying fuck. And there's one thing in this movie, it annoys me on a level that hurts my soul. And they have this weird music cue that pops up, and it's meant to be, like, I guess, evocative of the Jerry Springer show moments, I guess. And it's just, I want to know what stock library that came out of. Somehow find a way to delete that from the ethos of history and just make sure that just never exists. But yeah, this movie has nothing redeeming about it. Like, I can't find anything to say about it, because, like, Jamie Presley, I liked her in My Name is Earl. I mean, she's even a kind of a shitty character in Dead or Alive, if you remember that movie. It's just like, why did this exist? And like Adam was saying, like, what is this movie trying to say? And the director weirdly made movies about child soldiers in Uganda, if the Wikipedia is to be believed. So it's not like the director was incompetent, but I guess, money talks, I guess. It was very, very confusing.
I don't blame you for being confused. I think I was confused too. I was aware of Ringmaster when it came out. I don't think I ever saw it until the other day when I watched it for our discussion here. Handily available on Plex, which is one of the Freevee services.
Let's see. It's on Plex, it's on Tubi, it's on Amazon for some inexplicable reason.
So it's available if you want to check it out. But, I remember the Springer show. Here in Canada, on one of the multicultural channels, they actually, because it was syndicated, but they played it at 10 o'clock at night, so you could watch it like in prime time. And so when I was in high school, that's when it aired. It aired in prime time at 10 o'clock at night, so you could watch it and go in at school the next day and talk about the craziness you see on the Springer show. I think what's happened is, and this is again sort of looking backwards now, Springer was caught between, on the one hand, what happened after him, which was like reality TV, the boom of reality TV, where you could like see entire shows built around the characters who appeared on his show once and then went on with their lives. And then the talk show hosts before him, like the Geraldo Riveras, the Morton Downey Jr.'s, like, Jerry Springer didn't actually create anything new with his talk show. So I feel like whatever cultural cachet it has been memory hold. So looking backwards at this seems even more useless, because not only does the film itself have nothing to say, but it feels like Springer himself really didn't contribute anything to the culture that hadn't already been done for him, or wouldn't be done better by creating entire shows around the people and then getting rid of him as the middleman.
Now, you see, this film gets my rating of, this isn't a movie. This is a collection of scenes disguised as a movie.
Would you like to hear my Letterboxd review of this?
I've read it, but go ahead for everyone else.
So this is 1 star. It opens with a blowjob, clearly destined for the Library of Congress. I'm in hell. This is bad. Explosive and uncontrolled diarrhea is a more fun way to spend 90 minutes. Not sure if drugs can save this. Pray for Mojo, you Wookiee looking motherfucker.
I'll say this for Michael J. White. He looks great.
That was the best part of this. Yeah.
I mean,
but yeah, this.
The other thing is, Jamie Presley, who is one of these actresses who like gets a lot of work for like a 5-6 year stretch and then kind of doesn't, because she doesn't break out. And I have a lot of fondness for those actresses, but I mean, there's. I'm not entirely sure what to make of this outside of any sort of cultural commentary about who Jerry Springer was, what the Jerry Springer Show was. But it just seemed like somebody thought, Jerry Springer Show is popular. People like Jerry Springer. What if we just turned it into a movie? And I mean, that also fits into the 90s. Like, we talked about 90s films in a recent, the superhero movies, but this was a thing in the 90s too, turning TV shows into movies, and not just things like the Mod Squad or the Brady Bunch or even Mission Impossible, but turning TV shows that were popular at the time into movies, like the Power Rangers, the X-Files. This seems like an extension of that. That's almost the limit of sort of what I can offer in terms of critical appraisal about what this movie has to offer, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I mean, like, the one person who was like Springer, but I never felt as exploitative, and maybe I'm wrong in this assessment, was Maury Povich. And Maury's show, its most popular was like, "You are not the father," or whatever. Yeah. There's a skit I'm gonna play at the end of this thing, and it's a clip out of UHF with Weird Al where George has like, "Sex with furniture, what do you think?" And I felt like Springer leaned into that, and UHF was 1990, so I don't know, it's almost like this was predictive of the weirdness that would eventually follow. But yeah, like, culturally significant, I can't find anything, but yeah, it's a weird time capsule and snapshot of how things were. And I don't know, there is a new Netflix documentary on Jerry Springer as of this recording. I think it's called Fight Camera Action. I think it is. Yeah, so you can watch that on Netflix if you're curious to learn more about Jerry's life and career. And I know there was a short-lived spin-off of Jerry Springer involving one of the security guards that eventually got spun off. And I don't remember how long that lasted, but that was a trip. So yeah, that's going to bring to a conclusion on this edition of Loose Cannon. So big thanks to Adam and Ken for joining me on this very uneven trip through hell. It starts out pleasant and then ends with Michael J. White blowjobs. And that's how it is. So anyway, guys, we will be back here on the show talking about more interesting movies, some good, some bad, some utterly strange, but hopefully you have enjoyed your time with us. So Ken, if people want to find you around the interwebs, where would they have to go?
You can find me pretty much everywhere at Ken Reels. Follow my Letterboxd. I do the reviews of pretty much everything that comes out, at least 2 movies a week. So, and then also do reviews of stuff I watch for this show and other projects.
Good times. And Adam, if people want to find your other podcast and work, where do they have to go?
To everything I do on my social medias, just search for my name, Adam A. Donaldson, all one word, and follow along.
All right, there, guys. So we will be back next time right here on thisweekingeek.net. So until next time, the Twig video store is closing as we sweep up the popcorn, rewind the tapes. Inevitably, we're going to find some DVDs that are scratched, so we're going to go resurface those. So we will be back next time. So until next time, guys, be kind, rewind.
Lesbian Nazi hookers abducted by UFOs and forced into weight loss programs. All this week on Town Talk.
Are either one of these any good? Sir?
What?
Are either one of these any good?
I don't watch movies.
Quick! Change the channel!
You're wasting your life making shit! Nobody cares! These movies are terrible!
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.